Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Windows compiler. Today, we will look at the use of scroll bars on your dynamic forms. In our last video, we created an application to give the user a dynamic form on which there was an image button. Each time the image button is clicked on, a new set of labels and text boxes appears on the screen. What we're going to do today is we're going to add a scroll bar to this. So if we go into the PowerBasic Forms to design our form. In here we have the form as it exists when the application loads initially, with just two buttons on the screen, a standard exit button and an image button, which we use to add the objects. What we're going to look at is the vertical scroll bar. Now, it may seem strange to have a scroll bar that isn't actually associated with any object on the screen. You will have probably used scroll bars before in list boxes, drop-down combos, or grids, or even multi-line text boxes, where scrolling up and down will actually move the information that's within the object up or down on the screen. However, having a scroll bar which is quite independent does give you a great deal of flexibility. So we've created the scroll bar on the screen. Let's just extend it down slightly and have a look at its properties. Now the scroll bar naturally has a caption and a name. Now we're going to leave all the standard default properties as they are. If we just save this and go back to our form and do the F2 and have a look at the form itself, we'll see at the bottom of the form there's a new command, a control add scroll bar, giving all the information that we've put in the designer, the location on screen, the height and width, and set to show that it's a vertical scroll bar. If we have a look in the help for PowerBasic, we'll see there are a number of commands you can actually use on a scroll bar control. You can set the range of the scroll bar for a high and a low value. It defaults between 0 and 100. You can actually set the position of the scroll bar, and you can get the position of the scroll bar to find out what its current value is. Now we'll leave the defaults there as they have at the moment, and we'll look at actually manipulating objects on the screen using our scroll bar. So if we try running the code now, we will see that the scroll bar does indeed appear on the screen, and it will let you scroll up and down. Of course, this has no action on the objects on our screen because we haven't connected the scroll bar to an object. One of the problems with putting many objects on the screen is obviously there is a limit to the amount of screen real estate you can actually use. We could put probably a couple of extra fields onto the screen before we ran out of space. What we can use the scroll bar to do is to help it manipulate this information that's on the screen. So let's move our scroll bar over a bit so it's closer in line with our boxes. That's pretty close. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to use the scroll bar to dynamically control the fields that appear on the screen. We numbered all the fields between field 1 and field 10 and text box 1 to text box 10. So now that we have the scroll bar on the form, how do we control it? We'll need to be able to detect when the user actually clicks on a number of areas of the scroll bar. When they click on the up or the down, or when they actually move the setting up or down, or having done that, when they click below or above the actual little bar. So let's have a look at the code in our event handler, the callback function. In our callback function here, this is where all the events that happen on the form are handled. The events we've looked at already are ones to do with the WM command. For example, when a button is actually clicked. So what we need to pick up are the events that happen when our scroll bar is actually clicked on. Now these don't happen inside this case statement, we'll need a special statement just for the scroll bar. WMV scroll is the one we're after. Now in this case, as there is only one scroll bar on the screen, we don't have to identify which scroll bar has been clicked on if there were multiple. So this simplifies the code slightly. The first thing we need to do is to pick up the event. This will allow us to pick up one of several events. The line up event, the line down event, the page up and down events, and also the event when the user moves the little thumb handle down the screen. So now that we have each of the events actually sitting inside our select statement, we need to decide what we want to do when the user actually does these things. So we'll wish to store the value of the scroll bar at any point in time. So we're going to create a local variable inside the callback function to store that information. Now we're going to make that a static variable so it retains its value for each call to the function. So when the object at the top of the scroll bar is actually clicked on to move the pointer up, we want to actually reduce the value we're storing at the moment. So we will decrement that value, and when we're going down, we will increment the value. The value will start off as 0. So what we will do, we will set that value initially up at the initialization part of our dialog, and we'll make it 1. We also want to set two other variables. We want to set the range of our scroll bar, and we want to set the page size. So when a user clicks below the thumb object, how far do we go down? So we'll create two additional variables to keep track of that information. Scrollbook page and scrollbook range. And we'll set them at the beginning of our code. So in the initializing handler, we're starting at position 1, the total range is 100, and our page size we will make 10. And we can set that page size in code using the scrollbar set page size command, giving it the three parameters: the handle to the dialog, the handle to the scroll bar, and the value we wish to set, which in this case is 10. So back in our event handler, we can now handle what happens when we do a page down. Now we know we want to change the value of the actual setting, which is long SB value. Now we want to add on to that long SB value the value of the page size. However, we don't want it to go beyond the boundings of the entire range of the scroll bar. So the easiest way to do that without a lot of if statements is to use the min command. If we use that, and the other parameter we put in is the range size, the code will actually calculate the value, which is current, plus the page size, which we know is 10, and it will also compare that with the SB range, and whichever one is the smaller is the one that goes into that value. This is an easy way of making sure we don't go beyond the boundings. And the same logic would go in for our page up using the max command. Now, having done that, we want some kind of feedback while we're doing our debug to make sure things are happening properly. So we're going to, after the events have set this value, we're going to set the position of the scroll bar to that value using the scrollbar set position command. And just for a bit of feedback on the screen, while we're coding up this application, we will set the status bar to that value just so we can see what value it's sitting at each time it's clicked on. So if we try running our code now, we'll see there is our scroll bar, and if we click the little down arrow, we'll see the values move from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Each time this is clicked, it goes up by 1. If we click the area below this little bar, it should go up by 10, which it does. And if we click the area above the bar, it will be reduced by 10. And if we click the arrow at the top, it will be reduced by 1. So the only thing we have to set is when the bar itself is actually dragged down. That's an event we're not currently handling. This is handled in the thumb track event. So in the thumb track event, the user has grabbed hold of that little bar and either moved it up or down. So what we need to do in the event is to figure out what position the scroll bar was in when the user let go of it. And in this, we can use the scroll bar get track pause command. Again, 3 parameters: the handle of the dialog, the handle of the scroll bar, and the variable to which you're going to put that value. Now, since we're using SB value for the current position, we can quite happily populate it in there. And once all these events have passed by, we will then set the position. If we run that now, we will see that should we grab hold of it, it will show the position that it's currently in, and when we let go, it will remain at the value it was left at. So it stays at 50 or all the way back down to 0. So we now have a way of actually moving the scroll bar up and down. And we're picking back from the scroll bar's events the value it's currently set at. The incrementing one's going, they will have to test the incrementing one because the incrementing one is actually going beyond the boundings. So we can fix that using the same approach. And the same for the line down. And that will hopefully fix our code. So we come right down to the bottom. It should now go no further than 100. And if we go up to the top, it should go no further than 1. So having sorted out the event handling for a scroll bar, how can we use that on the screen? We can redraw our text boxes on the screen or relabel them based on the position we're currently set at. Now, if we're going to work on the assumption that there could be 10 objects on the screen, we're going to step through those. So the easiest way to do that is to create a new function. Now we know the value we're currently picking up is this. Now this will be the start value, and we know the range is going to be this one here. So we'll then create this new function to relabel all our objects. Now if we work on the assumption that there are 10 objects on screen, we'll want to run through and effectively just change the text of each of these. Now we'll need another parameter, we'll need the dialog handle. Always a good thing to have. Saves hard coding it into the code. So we'll just knit back and we'll put that in as an extra parameter. Now we know our range starts at a particular number, and that was done by our start label and start text commands. So we're going to use those. So if we're relabeling the first one, this is our label, and we're going to call it field, and there's going to be a number. And this would be our long R. Now the value we're passing in is the number we wish to begin at. So this would have to go inside here as a calculated field. So let's create a variable for that. Make the code nice and straightforward. So the code will be equal to the value plus long R minus 1. And our start label would also need to be calculated, because the start label would be for the first one. Right, so if we add all our fields on the screen so we can actually see them, so there are 10. So if we scroll down, we'll see that the field numbers are actually changing. Now we're not actually putting any more objects on screen or deleting any objects. We're just giving the illusion to the user that the field numbers are changing. Now we're not actually touching the bottom one, so we need to do something with that. But you can see the principle in here quite easily, so we'll do the same with the text boxes. And we'll add our objects on screen. And we'll scroll down, and there they are, all quite happily changing on the screen. Now, using this technique, you can give the illusion to the user that there are in fact 100 or more objects on the screen, when it's still the exact same number of objects. The only difference being is we're giving the user a scroll bar to step through them. And while we are populating them with a hard-coded value, this value could of course be coming from somewhere else in the system or a database, thereby giving you a way of displaying on screen a lot of information with very few objects. Hopefully this will make the use of the horizontal and vertical scroll bars much easier for you. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.